On a warm night, the atmosphere in this ballpark was special, and it was new for the city at that time. I know the Stampeders were going through a tough time, and this was something new, and we were so excited about it when they came.
Welcome to episode 320 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland, and this is the first of two episodes we have dropping this week. I'll share some details on who will be on the next episode and when it'll be coming out at the end of the show. We thought we'd put this one together, though, after the outpouring of interest after our post about a week ago showing excavators moving into Foothills Stadium in Calgary and starting to finally take down what was once a monolith for baseball in the city. After years of neglect and a plan to build a new field house on the site, it seems the city thought the recent blast of warm February weather was an ideal time to get things going. It is a bittersweet time for many who followed the Cardinals, Expos, Cannons, Outlaws, Vipers, Bucks, Dinos, and even the Dogs program, who started in Foothills before a bitter squabble with the Vipers over field time led to them leaving for Okotoks, which is a move that has proved to be a very good one nearly 20 years later. To take a look back, we'll hear from former Cardinals, Expos, and Cannons owner Russ Parker in a minute, but let's bring in Ian Wilson, as the two of us have been busy with media interviews in the last week or so and wanted to bring you a conversation firsthand just for our followers. So Ian, welcome, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What went through your mind when you first arrived on scene, seeing those three excavators digging up and bulldozing Foothills Stadium?
Yeah, I mean, there's part of the scope of the project itself and the mess that's being made there, I guess, and the rubble and the construction site or demolition site, I guess, in this case, all those sounds and sights of that you're kind of taking in. And I actually kind of wondered if I might feel some kind of emotion seeing it, because that's a important ball diamond for me as a fan. But I didn't actually really feel a lot of that. I think it was kind of like when that has been on life support for so long, for lack of a better term, and it was just kind of like, yeah, I guess it's time. It's time for this to come down and for this to happen. And it's sad. It's still sad to see. But yeah, I just think we know there's no future for that ballpark. We know there was no ideas to keep Foothills Stadium or preserve it as a historical site or anything like that. So let's get on with it, as much as it pains me to say and to see.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I kept coming back to the word bittersweet whenever we did a ton of interviews over the course of the last week. And that was the number one word that kept coming to mind, right? Is like, yeah, it sucks, because there was always that little voice in the back of my head that was sitting there going, hey, maybe someone will come in with a wad of cash and promise to build this thing up and tell the city, no way, you're building it, that your field house somewhere else. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't bring it upon myself to get down that rabbit hole enough, I guess. And so then it became, okay, waiting. And it was sort of one of those, it's about time. Like, we've been talking about this now almost from the very beginning. I was looking back in the archives, and one of the first 5 or 6 shows we were talking about Foothills Stadium and the need to demolish it. And there were some questions about the future of it. And so here we are on episode 320, and which is more than, 6 years later, essentially. And we're finally seeing some resolution to this. And it's been long, it's been drawn out. It's had a lot of question marks, especially for the users of it, particularly the University of Calgary Dinos. It's kind of about time that they have some clarity on what's next, and so they can start planning for the future as well, which I think is the bigger piece to all of this.
Do they?
Yeah.
Do they have clarity, though? Because that diamond is still, from as far as we can tell, going to be used. Everything around it is coming down, and that diamond will still be used. So in some ways, there's not clarity around it, and I believe the Bucks are going to be using it as well. So I do wonder about that. And then I just think, as much as there's clarity on it, the structure coming down, I think everyone talks about the field house that's coming in. That's kind of the next thing that gets mentioned. I'm like, yes, that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's been a plan for over a decade. There is some funding set aside for that, but I think it's still like a third of the funding is maybe in place. So that could be an eyesore for a while. No matter, if the Dinos are there or the Bucks are there playing in a interesting location, an interesting facility, whatever you want to call it. There's no dugouts there or anything like that. So I think there's still this air of what next, and will it be, if you can get to the field house, that's great for sports in Calgary. But I wonder how soon, when that next chapter is coming. So yeah, I don't even know if I can put the sweet part in the bitter part. There's just, for me, there's a lot more bitter there than sweet.
Now, that being said, there have been some pretty sweet memories made in that barn over the years. I wanted to get your pulse on some of the favorite things when you look back on your days of, going to Cannons games or Vipers games or Dinos games. Like, were there a few that made you go, man, like, there's some cool things that happened here?
Absolutely. Like, I remember going, when my friends, I went to University of Regina, but when my friends went to University of Calgary, I started coming to visit them, and we'd go to games. And it was like, wow, like this is a step up from Athletic Park, which is what I was used to in Medicine Hat. And this is kind of the big time. This is, or as big time as we're going to get in Western Canada. And it really felt that way. It was exciting to watch the Cannons and see Tino Martinez do his thing. He's the guy that really stood out to me. I remember seeing Dale Swaim, who is like a third baseman and a long time journeyman and a regular for the Brewers for a while in MLB. Really good player. And I remember I didn't necessarily think much of that guy. I remember collecting his baseball cards. And then I got to see him play, and I was like, this is a really talented, good player. And he was kind of on the down slope of his career. So there's some memories like that stand out with the Cannons. I remember watching Sammy Sosa play one game when he was with the Vancouver Canadians, and he was so fast. Like, he was a scrawny kid back then. He was super fast. I think he stole like 2 bases that game, and he was a nightmare in the outfield. He was just booting balls all over the place. So there's things like that come to mind. I when I was an intern at the Calgary Herald in the mid '90s, I got to cover a series of the Cannons, a 3-game set, and that was awesome. I was a kid in a candy store doing that. It was so fun going from the Dew side to that, and yeah. So there's a ton of memories, and then of course the Vipers side. I didn't go to as many Vipers games as Cannons games, but seeing Jose Canseco at that one game I saw was hilarious. Like, he was just such a showman and an entertainer. And, he hit a homer in the game I went to. He pitched and struck a guy out. He had fans thrown out. It was just thoroughly entertaining.
It's funny. I didn't get to see many games. I do remember listening to games on the radio when they actually did games on the radio. But the number one thing that I kept getting asked over the course of the last week or so is about the players. And you mentioned Martinez and you mentioned Canseco and some of the guys. And I mean, we won't reiterate a lot of them because we've talked about it on this show more than enough times, whether it's Valenzuela or Edgar or like the list goes on and on. But the thing that I can't quite get over, I think, is affiliated baseball left Alberta between 2002 and 2004, Medicine Hat and Calgary in 2002, Edmonton in 2004. So if you're a 20-year-old or under in this province, you have no idea or have very little idea or particularly no recollection of the fact that we had minor league affiliated baseball in this province. And in fact, at some points, 4 different cities. Like, that part to me is kind of what strikes me about the loss of Foothills Stadium, like at least in Medicine Hat with Athletic Park or Spitz Stadium in Lethbridge or Remax in Edmonton, is that you do have that facility still there. And so you can still kind of pay homage to yesteryear to a certain extent. In Calgary, you no longer have that. You don't really have that jumping off point. You no longer have that icebreaker of a conversation piece when people drive by and go, "Oh, what plays there?" Right? Like that's all gone now, and it's sad. And I mean, that's part of the reason why we started what we started with Dugout Stories. But it's sad to a certain extent that in Calgary there's this real quickness to blow things up and kill off anything that's got any kind of age or lineage to it, because we're missing out on that opportunity to kind of tell our story of yesteryear.
Yeah, it certainly was a golden era of minor league baseball in the province, from 75 through, like you said, I think it was 2004 for the Trappers, and that's a quarter century over that of excellent, professional baseball that we're, I don't know that we'll ever see that again, but it was an exciting time to be a baseball fan in this province. And I think it's still an exciting time now. It's just different. It's just a different brand of ball that's available to us. And, we're still able to make memories now, but it's just, we don't necessarily have the buzz of players coming to town or prospects that are being hyped up coming through, and that's too bad.
Mm-hmm. A lot of memories being shared over the last little while. A lot of people getting into our socials, commenting on everything. It's been fantastic to watch. Is there anything really that sticks out to you from the reaction piece, whether it's the interviews that you've done, or whether it be on the radio or TV, or whether it's you chatting with different people in passing that's made you kind of go, oh yeah, that's kind of cool? Because you put together a really great piece on just the reaction stuff. Was there anything that really stuck out to you?
I think for me, because I had kind of, like I said, turned the page on this chapter of baseball, and we get asked, from time to time about pro ball coming back and anything like the Cannons coming back. And I'm, you kind of shrug it off. And I think in my own head, I'm like, no, I think that's history. So, when you kind of put that to bed yourself and then put it in the rearview mirror, you kind of forget that how many people connected with this brand of baseball, with the Cannons specifically, but the Vipers as well, the Expos, the Cardinals to some degree. So I think you forget about the depth of that connection and how widespread that was. And I think that's what stood out to me the most, is that, there's a section, fairly large section of this city. And yes, it's older because younger kids didn't grow up with this, but they've got a lot of memories tied up with that, with AAA baseball and with the Vipers and the baseball that came through Foothills Stadium.
Mm-hmm. Now, one guy that you managed to catch up with during all of this random happenstance is going to be our first kind of official guest here. Ian's going to come back and we're going to talk about the future and maybe just a little bit of maybe looking down south and saying, man, that Okotoks, they sure did things right. We're going to get to that in a second, but first, here's Ian Wilson with the one and only Russ Parker.
Lo and behold, I'm wandering around Foothills Stadium, what's left of it, and taking a few pictures, and I find Russ Parker. You're doing the same thing. Russ, just first off, what's going through your mind right now?
Well, it's sad, and when I think back of the beginnings and watching the first steel girder going up, and then the extension of it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is truly going to be a stadium.
Yeah.
And we needed a stadium that had a minimum seating of 5,000 to acquire the approval of the franchise moving to Calgary. So
right. That was for the Cannons.
That was for the Cannons.
Yeah.
And then obviously from there we expanded on the stadium and the field house here for the players, for the dressing rooms and all of that. That was something that we added in 1987, actually, when we did the first expansion, when it was obvious that we had a success story here.
Well, I think it was. I think 18 years of marriage between the Cannons and the city, not including, the Cardinals and the Expos as well. Yeah. I would call that a success. You poured so much work and effort into building this. What are the emotions like now, just seeing it come down with no foreseeable
Yeah.
structure to take its place.
Well, I knew it was going to happen. You know, without another permanent baseball tenant, where it would require a stadium of this size, it's costing the city money, I'm sure, trying to keep it up.
Yeah.
With no income coming in. So it was inevitable that it was going to happen. And I drive by because I live in the Northwest, so I go by the stadium continually. So I always had lots of fond memories. Every time I go by, I usually think about something.
Yeah.
And but now it's happened, and it is.
It's a different emotion when you see it come down.
Well, for sure. Yeah, because we put so much into it, as you mentioned, made a serious financial investment in it, and that a lot of people probably don't realize. The city initially built it in its minimum requirement, and I have to say, at that time, our city mayor, Ralph Klein, was very supportive, and without him, I probably would have never have gotten done. But in order to acquire the franchise, I had to show them that we had a facility. So we did all these artist renderings, take down to the PCL, renderings that don't look anything like this, but they satisfied the Pacific Coast League executives. They said, yeah, okay, we didn't have much of an alternative at that time, so they said, let's do it. But then the architectures that the city hired to build the stadium looked totally different. I gave them a lot of credit. They were outstanding to work with too. They kept coming back as, you know what, we should do maybe this or this or that or the other thing. And I always said, well, that's good, but can you get the city to approve the additional funding? And through Ralph and City Council, we were able to get some additional funding to build it like we had it. And it was a great AAA baseball stadium. In its time, for sure. Doesn't compare to anything that's been built recently in PCL or AAA baseball. They all look like miniature Major League stadiums is what they now look like.
That's right.
So this one, mind you, the one in Tacoma is still sitting there, I guess, and we always thought we had a better stadium than Tacoma.
Yeah, Remax Field in Edmonton is still going as well.
Yeah, that's right.
But that almost feels too big at times.
Yeah, it is, and they obviously did a big expansion too. When they first got the Trappers, they had a sort of a piecemeal kind of ballpark. So they, to their credit, they got the owner there, Bockington, was able to get some funds, as he generally always did. And they have a nice stadium. Yeah, for sure.
Any memories specifically that come to mind? I mean, there's so many nights. I mean, whether it was the inaugural night, the snowstorm, the start, the playoff runs, all that. Or even just the interactions with the players. It wasn't so long ago that I saw you over here when Edgar Martinez was inducted into the Hall of Fame. You just encountered so many great people along the way.
Well, for sure. If you start naming off players that played here or came through here, it's an enormous list. One of the things I always remember, though, John Richardson, my first general manager, and John said, anybody wants to come, we'll find a place for them to be in the park. So on more than one occasion in our early years, we had special nights, and John wouldn't turn anybody away, even though the park was sold out. So he lined the people up, fans who agreed to go, to stand in the outfield, along the outfield wall.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I don't remember that.
No. So we had it roped off here. So if you wanted to come in, you bought your ticket. About 2 deep along the outfield wall.
Crazy.
It was incredible. I'll never forget that ever. And I came that night. To get into the park, and I was told that some people I knew were leaving, and I saw them. I said, "Where are they going?" They said, "No, we can't get in. It's sold out." And I thought, "It's sold out?" And I got here, and it was sold out, of course. And John had already gone and started putting people along the outfield wall. So that is one thing I will never forget. And obviously, there are some more celebrations where we won the pennant here. Packed house, and in the last.
I think we're gonna have to move out of the way.
The final game too.
I was here that night.
Yeah.
I recall that.
And again, we had a huge crowd, people paying their tributes and saying thank you, I guess, as much as anything. And so that's a memory, but not a great one.
Yeah. Well, it was a good send off and a good comeback for the Cannons that night too, an improbable one, and just the send off was nice. And it makes me kind of sad that the facility itself didn't have a similar send off. I know we with Alberta Dugout Stories we're encountering a lot of fans who are maybe hurting from this moment. Do you have any message for baseball fans out there who just might be down in the dumps over the state of baseball and the facilities in the city?
Well, I hope they are. I run into people constantly who tell me how much they miss the Cannons.
Yeah.
So they're out there, people that were regular season ticket holders and enjoyed the nights here. On a warm night, the atmosphere in this ballpark was special.
Yeah.
It really was.
It was, yeah.
And it was new for the city at that time. I know, St. Peter's were going through a tough time, and I can't remember what the Flames were doing, but anyway, this was something new, and people were so excited about it when they came. And when they left the ballpark, smiles on their faces. Didn't matter if we won.
Yeah.
They were thoroughly entertained
Yeah.
when they were here. And I credit our people that work for us for that.
Well, I grew up in Medicine Hat, so I went to Athletic Park frequently as a kid, and that was my intro to pro ball.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I moved to Calgary, I got here. This was the bigs. This was the show.
Oh,
this
yeah.
was the next big thing. We weren't anywhere close to any major league baseball facilities, and it was kind of the big time for the city.
Well, it was for sure. And I think back, a lot of people didn't realize how good it was even.
Yeah.
It took people a long time to realize that, Edgar Martinez.
Tino Martinez.
Yeah,
and,
Tino.
yeah.
They played here.
Yeah.
Edgar, we had A-Rod for 25 days.
Yeah.
It was. So that you go on and on and on with the names. So for people that took them a while to realize that a lot of them called it semi-pro baseball.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
God,
Yeah.
that would irritate me.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
That's
It never
right.
will.
That's
never
right.
will in
That's right.
Calgary.
Yeah.
This was, as you said, this was the big leagues.
Yeah.
And the players, the quality of the game, how they played it, it was so it was major league.
Yeah.
In every sense of the way.
Yeah.
In the word, it was major league. I miss it all the time. I mean, I'm a big baseball fan. We go down to spring training, which we are going in
Yeah.
3 weeks there.
Well,
I see people all the time that are still in the game
Yeah.
that were here. Dave Brundage. Every time I go down to the Giants complex, I see Brundage. Oh no, it's go on and on.
Great conversation there with Russ Parker, courtesy of Ian Wilson, who joins us on this special Monday drop of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. And Ian, a lot of memories, but now the focus can shift to the future. I won't get into the Fieldhouse thing. I've said my bit about how this is needed and that kind of thing. But I think from a baseball perspective, I think the big question in my mind goes to what's next for Calgary? And I'm going to use this as the example, is Baseball Canada at the end of 2024 announced its host cities. And one of those host cities for the 19U Women's Championship is technically Calgary. However, who's hosting it? Weber Academy, technically Springbank. I'm talking about downtown, or I shouldn't even say downtown. You're not building a stadium in downtown Calgary. However, what is next for Calgary? The Calgary proper, because I feel like Okotoks cornered the market. Weber's doing a great job out in the west side. There's talk about Airdrie in the north side. Is there a place in Calgary proper for baseball in your eyes?
Yeah, they've got us surrounded, right?
Yeah.
They've, I don't know. It's this weird black hole for baseball, right? I think you and I both know that there's a huge fan base. There's huge participation levels for the sport in Calgary proper. And yet, all around us, we've got these great academies. You talked about Weber and, of course, dogs. And what are the dogs doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's their off season. They're building.
Yeah.
Of course they are. They're constantly improving that. It's not even a Siemens Stadium anymore. It's a Siemens Stadium complex because they have other fields there. So they just keep expanding and growing and improving. And it's a sight to behold, really. And in Calgary proper, you're like I dug up that one quote in my story. It was from 1977. And it's a coach who was with the Calgary Spikes of this junior league saying it's disgusting that we have one decent ballpark in a city of 500,000. He was referring to Foothills Stadium. Fast forward to now, and we've got 1 million more people, and we don't even have one. We do have some good diamonds for Little League. We've got good diamonds for slow pitch, good diamonds for high school ball. But where is a stadium where you can invite 1,000 people to go watch high caliber baseball? It does not exist in Calgary. And that is disgusting, to use that coach's words, all this time later. And I don't know. I don't see anyone with a vision to build, a high-end facility for baseball in Calgary proper. So maybe it's just going to keep growing along the outskirts. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say, because I just don't see a vision or a plan or any reason to. I'm always hopeful, but I just don't know. Like things can happen out of the blue, and we see that happen. But I'm not privy to it, so I don't know.
No, and I think I'm in the same boat. I'm skeptical, right? Because you have to. It's one thing to say, hey, we want to bring a team here, but it's more than just a team. You now have to build a stadium, right? And we've got some really recent ideas of what stadiums cost, right? Sylvan Lake just built, Spruce Grove's building, Fort Mac's relatively new. So we've got some examples of what it costs to build a brand new stadium. And I don't know if there's the will in Calgary to do it. Mainly because you look at how much pushback something simple like getting a rebuild of McMahon Stadium together, or the contentious Calgary Arena project, or there just doesn't seem to be a lot of desire from a city perspective to invest in new sports facilities. And so as a result, you see what you've seen with, say, Calgary FC, or pardon me, Cavalry FC, where they've done their stuff down in Spruce Meadows. You look at what has happened with the Calgary Surge, and they're out at Winsport, right? So it's not like they're getting new facilities. They're making it happen within the structures that are already present. And I don't think there's a lot of room or desire to make it happen in Calgary, unfortunately. So to your point, it's going to be the outskirts. Okotoks is going to dominate everything south of Bow River. I've often called the Bow River South team, right? I've said there's some interest in Airdrie. I don't know how much. They need to build a stadium, obviously. So that's going to be a big point of whether or not there's somebody there with a big wad of cash burning a hole in a wallet. Out east, again, Weber Academy, I'm never going to rule them out of maybe possibly getting into something bigger down the line. I don't know what Dr. Weber and company have up their sleeves up there. So, I mean, there's options. It's just not going to be within the city of Calgary, which I think kind of dovetails to my next question of you. And I know you've been asked it, I've been asked it, but let's get it on the record for everyone who listens to the show who might not have listened to our interviews over the last little while. Will professional baseball come back to Calgary like the Cannons anytime in the foreseeable future?
Short answer is no. The longer answer is, and I've said this, I think you're as likely to get Major League Baseball in Calgary as you are to see AAA baseball return.
Ooh.
So which is essentially no.
Yeah.
uh, I think you could see a situation where you get a independent league type situation arise, try to make a go of it. But again, our starting point is, where's the facility?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe if they set up somewhere else, maybe if Weber Academy is a host of some kind of team, that's something. But if you're talking Calgary proper, you've got to build a ballpark. So how long is that going to take? When's that going to happen? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? So without that home, I don't see you being able to host much of any kind of team. So let alone professional baseball. And then there's so many other factors on top of that. Minor league baseball, the whole landscape there has shifted since the Cannons were involved and playing. Our dollar is not great right now. We are on the precipice of some potential trade war with the United States, which would likely provide a lot of the players and supplies and things like that. So that doesn't really create certainty for setting up a professional baseball team in Calgary. I mean, if I'm being generous, you could say never, but my magic 8 ball says no.
You're saying that I'm generous, and you're also saying there's a chance. I know it's a very, very small chance, but it's funny, though, when you think back to, I'm going to go in the way back time machine for a second. 1981, the Edmonton Trappers arrive in Edmonton. They didn't have a Pioneer League team like the other cities did. And Peter Pocklington was a big player for the Trappers as far as, giving money to Mel Kowalchuk and being a partner in that whole process. And there's an article in there, and I want to say it was Terry Jones who wrote it, but I can't remember exactly who, where Pocklington came out and said, hey, all we need to do is build a domed stadium, and I want to bring Major League Baseball to town. And it's funny to think that here we are 44 years later, and that dream obviously never happened, but it's crazy to think how the times have changed to the point where we can't even have a conversation about building a stadium in Calgary, let alone talking about back then. Can you imagine if Edmonton had come through with that and built a domed stadium for baseball? I guarantee you Russ Parker would have moved heaven and hell to make sure that he could have done the same thing in Calgary, right? Like that's how crazy the last 45, 50 years have been for baseball in this part of the country.
Yeah, it's sad too that you're talking about people dreaming that big.
Yeah,
I'm not sure those dreamers are even out there. So that again, that's a sad statement in its own right, right? Like if someone were to come out now and hold a press conference and say, we're working to bring Major League Baseball to Calgary, would the response not be laughter?
Probably, as crazy as that sounds, but I would argue, and here's the crazy part, maybe I'm the dreamer, I just need a bigger, fatter wallet, but now would be a perfect time, because Calgary would not be one of the smallest markets in Major League Baseball. When you think about Cleveland, Cincinnati, like some of those markets, Kansas City, they're smaller than Calgary proper, and when you add the whole metropolitan area, Calgary would not be the smallest market. Why couldn't it happen given the demographics of the city, the things that have changed in this province over the last little while, the energy that is here, the economy is still strong here, whether you like it or not? It would be almost an ideal time to do it versus what was going on in the early 80s in Calgary. And yet here we are not even able in the city of Calgary to support summer college ball. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to look at how well our last Olympic bid did, to see the appetite for some of that. And again, I'm not trying to be negative. I just I'm trying to be realistic about the sport at a high level and its place on the landscape right now.
It's unfortunate. We've gone down a really negative rabbit hole. It's unfortunate. So let's end this thing on a positive note. Okotoks. You and I talk about this all the time, is the fact that Calgary baseball fans have to be looking down at Okotoks and going, man, what could have been. Like, they're doing things so right. To your point earlier, they're still building. As while everybody's talking right now about Foothills being demolished, they're building. They're still doing things. They're still expanding. There's great energy around that. Does that give you hope, I guess, to a certain extent, that as much as Calgary as a whole isn't doing all that well, but you look at what's going on around this province, there's some things that we got to be excited about, right?
100%. I think, what you're seeing with the Western Canadian Baseball League and a smaller extent with the West Coast League and the Riverhawks in Edmonton, you're seeing that the WCBL kind of fill the void and then some of what the Pioneer League and the Pacific Coast League and what they used to represent. So you've got these teams in smaller markets. You've got them in a larger market like Okotoks. Facilities are great. I don't think we've had in our province's history better ballparks in terms of the province than we've had right now. You've got building going on in Spruce Grove. Medicine Hat had renos recently. Lethbridge has still got a really nice ballpark. Sylvan Lake has come up with a great facility as well. So I think you've still got all this growth. You've got academy growth. You've got we're growing baseball players at a grassroots level better than we ever have in our history. So I think from that point of view, we should be very excited about baseball. I think the tone of the content of our discussion is mainly focused on Calgary for good reason with what's happened to Foothills Stadium. But when you widen out that lens a bit, you look at the province and you look at Saskatchewan too, right? And there's talk now of a new ballpark in Regina. Is it possible that Saskatoon down the road could be building a facility there? These are all good developments for the game in Alberta, Saskatchewan. And like I said, you're just seeing more guys kind of go in the draft and succeed. And you see Eric Sabrowski come through last year. It's all great for baseball. I think, Soroka's still, Soroka had a good spring training start the other day. We've got local talent at the highest levels and also filtering up through university and college programs like we've never seen before. So there's so many reasons to be optimistic about the game in a wider sense. And yes, Okotoks, hey, Calgary, you had the dogs. You had the dogs at Foothills Stadium. They even won a championship for you. You blew it. You let them go, and good on them. They're continuing to succeed and excel like never before.
It's a nightmare in Calgary, but everywhere else, it's perfectly fine and getting even better. Ian, always love having you on, especially when we get to kind of take a deep breath after what has been a bit of a whirlwind over last week, because I know you've done a bunch of great interviews. I've been doing a few as well. Great work this past week, pounding out stories left, right, and center. Always appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking the time for the show today.
And a 21-gun salute to you in honor of the Cannons, and hopefully we won't be too snake bit moving forward on the baseball coverage.
100%. Thanks again to Ian Wilson and Russ Parker for joining us for this special look back at Foothills Stadium. And thanks to all of you for listening and also for checking out our stories on the stadium, as they have been some of the most popular of all time. Clearly, the demolition has struck a chord. A tip of the cap, as always, to our Platinum supporters, the Okotoks Dogs, Under the Light Sports and Entertainment, and the Western Canadian Baseball League for their generosity and support in helping us tell the game stories in our province. For more on our tremendous teammates, head to albertadugoutstories.com/supporters. Before we go, just a heads up that we will have another episode for you on our regular drop date of Thursday. It'll be an all-encompassing interview with WCBL Fan for Life and Sportsnet Blue Jays broadcaster Jamie Campbell, as he's about to embark on a speaking tour through Weyburn and Lethbridge. You don't want to miss that conversation, and of course we'll have all the news headlines from the past week, including the upcoming announcement about a new team name for the Edmonton Prospects and a new coaching staff with the Fort McMurray Giants. That and so much more coming up later this week. Until then, thank you for all of your support online, on social, and on air. of Alberta Dugout Stories.